What's up YouTube, how goes it? Another day, another video. In today's video, we're having a look at the HP laptop. No really, that's literally what HP decided to call this guy. It's just called the HP laptop 15-inch. Now with that being said, it does have a model number. For this particular configuration, we've got Intel's latest 11th generation Core i5 quad-core processor, 8GB of DDR4 RAM, Intel's integrated Iris Xe graphics, of course a rather spacious 500GB solid state drive. We also have the latest Wi-Fi and Bluetooth standards on board, and this is a HD Plus display, meaning it's slightly above 720p. Now I played around this laptop for a couple of days and I have a pretty strong opinion and a pretty good review lined up for you guys, and I think you seriously might want to watch it before buying this computer because there are a bunch of caveats to consider. With all that said guys, if you do enjoy this video, consider liking it and subscribing to my channel. It means a ton to me, helps me grow and provide more quality content for you guys. Let's get started. Starting with the unboxing itself, as you can see, this is a pretty generic looking cardboard box with the HP branding. Not a whole lot to see honestly. Once you remove the content seal itself, inside you'll find a number of items. First and foremost, of course, the laptop itself in this nice metallic silver color, but we'll come back to that in a second. Beyond that, of course, you have a 45-watt charging adapter cable. It is proprietary, and no, this laptop does not support USB-C charging, unfortunately. You also have the wall outlet cable, and of course, your usual instruction manual, quick start guide, warranty practice, and best compliance information. So, you know, the fun stuff. Coming back to the laptop design. Look guys, I gotta be pretty honest with you. I've reviewed a number of mid-range laptops in 2021 now, and I have to say of all the ones I reviewed, this HP laptop is by far the least appealing to me, at least in terms of design. The minute you hold this thing, it feels cheap and flimsy. It doesn't feel like it's high quality TPU, rather it feels like it was literally mass manufactured as quickly as possible in a factory, which of course is the case. Now one good thing is because it's a full hard TPU build, this only weighs 3.7 pounds, so if you are planning on carrying this laptop around for long periods of time, it'll do just fine in that regards. Starting off with the top side of the laptop, right away you can see there's this nice metallic silver color. It's a full hard TPU finish, no textures, it's pretty smooth, which I can appreciate. Also, in between you have the HP logo, which has a nice reflective mirror-like surface in between. This is probably the most premium looking part of this laptop. As we make our way to the side of the laptop, you've got a decent amount of I/O ports. They're more or less in line with industry standards for most mid-range laptops. So on one side, you've got the DC jack and two USB 3.0 ports. As you make your way to the other side, you have a HDMI port, you have a USB-C port, you also have a headphone jack and a SD card reader, which is good if you're going to be sharing a lot of media. Now, when we make our way to the bottom side, it's pretty standard stuff. You've got a hard TPU shell, a large passive air intake vent, and you do have rubber grips to make sure the laptop stays in place, but not much else to see. As we unfold the laptop, I have to say, the chassis has a nice metallic finish and a design that actually looks pleasant to the eyes. As far as palm rest space goes, it's decent. It's not the most I've seen on a 15-inch laptop, but it's not bad either. The trackpad is where things get pretty interesting. This kind of seems like an ultra-wide trackpad. So what I mean is that it's super long in its length, but it's pretty short in terms of its width. So depending on the task you're doing, you may find this somewhat intrusive. Now, as far as the trackpad quality goes, HP really dropped the ball here. The trackpad feels cheap and flimsy. If you click on any particular corner, nearly half the trackpad literally lifts up. The surface is made of plastic, which in itself is not a bad thing, but just the overall positioning of the trackpad is really poorly done over here. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it doesn't get much better when you make your way to the keyboard. Now, while the keys are nice and large in terms of their surface area, they again feel cheap, flimsy, and loose. When you press on any particular key, it feels like it's really loosely in place. While key travel is decent, there's little to no tactile feedback. Type fast enough and you feel like you're typing on a really bad quality rubber dome keyboard. On top of that, there's no backlighting, which is shameful. Almost every mid-range laptop in this price range actually offers backlighting. This is the first laptop I've stumbled upon in this price range where there's no backlighting whatsoever. Thankfully, you do have the inclusion of a 10 keypad. Also, all the traditional media keys are integrated with the functional keys, and yes, you do have a dedicated power button. Beyond the keyboard itself, you can see you have a pretty large speaker grill. Now, we will be doing a detailed sound test later on in the video, so stay tuned for that. Also, you can see that this is a single tier hinge, and I have to be honest, it's not a bad hinge in terms of overall quality. It does wobble a little bit, but nothing too dramatic. Unfortunately, like a lot of laptops, the way this hinge is designed, if you actually open the laptop from the corner of the lid, you will put enormous strain on the hinge and you may potentially damage in the long term. Just be wary of that. As far as the display fitting is concerned, I have to say that this is more or less in line with 2021 standard. So you have a pretty thin chin on the bottom, and you can see that the bezels on the side are pretty thin as well, and more or less, again, like I said, aligned with what competitors offer. Now you do have a 720p webcam that isn't anything impressive, but it's not any worse than what you'll find in other laptops either. Let's talk about the display. Look, I really don't want to pick on HP any more than I already have in terms of this laptop, but this display is just a genuinely sad story. For beginners, HP only offers a HD Plus display over here with a resolution of 1366 by 768. It basically looks like a glorified Minecraft screen. Also, you have a peak brightness of 250 nits. Now, this isn't the worst I've seen on mid-range laptops. It's gonna do fine as far as most indoor lighting scenarios goes, but you cannot use this thing in direct sunlight, and you'll have a pretty hard time using it in any sort of indirect sunlight as well. So keep that in mind. On top of that, you only have a color rating of 45% NTSC. The screen looks washed out. I would not recommend this display for any sort of color intensive activities like photo editing or color grading. And in general, the viewing angles are quite literally horrendous. So if you're looking at this laptop from anything beyond, let's say, a couple of degrees from the center, you start noticing the white fade out coming pretty quickly. Overall, I have to say, guys, it's sad because there's competitors like the Acer Swift 3 that cost the exact same price as this laptop, and they offer a decent quality 1080p display. Now, I'm not expecting a top-notch display, but it would be nice to at least see a full HD display, considering that this is a mid-range laptop. If there is one saving grace for this laptop, it has to be its performance, which is more or less in line with the competition. So that Core i5 processor can definitely handle its own, and that 8GB of RAM is more than enough in most day-to-day scenarios. If you're doing daily tasks like web browsing, watching some Netflix, doing word processing, or anything of that nature, you'll generally find that this laptop will breeze right through it. Even if you're doing more moderately CPU intensive tasks, you'll still find the laptop generally holds its ground with little to no performance drop. Now, if you are doing something like video editing on here, which I would not advise in the first place because of the display, you'll find that anything higher than 1080p, that 8GB of RAM very quickly becomes a bottleneck, and you start noticing performance drops pretty quickly. On the note of gaming, this laptop isn't designed for gaming, so it's unfair to hold it to that standards, but that integrated Iris Xe chipset can definitely hold its ground. Playing games like Fortnite or Counter-Strike Go, for example, you can actually play on low to medium settings, in some cases with 60 plus frames per second, which is more than reasonable. If you dare run Cyberpunk on here, look, just don't. Just don't, right? Just don't. Let's talk about battery life. I just don't get what HP was doing. It's like they closed their eye to the competition. In our test, we basically found you can squeeze up to 7 hours of battery life with light use on this laptop at around 50% brightness, which is quite lackluster if you compare it again to the likes of the Dell Inspiron or the Acer Swift or the IdeaPad 5, which by the way all have higher resolution screens than the one you find on this laptop. Now, depending on what you're doing, the battery life can vary. If you are doing something more intensive like gaming, for example, that can very quickly drop to around the neighborhood of 1.5 to 2 hours. And if you are using it on maximum brightness, it can even drop beneath an hour in extreme use cases. But overall, the battery life is just not good. Let's talk about the sound quality on this thing. Despite the fact that HP put a large speaker grill on here, this is in fact a mono speaker. It's not a stereo setup. With that being said, sound quality isn't bad. This is a relatively loud laptop. You can have a quick listen for yourself. Alright, so the moment of truth, the final verdict. Look guys, I gotta be honest, priced at $620 USD or up here in Canada for $900, it's just genuinely hard to recommend this laptop given the fierce competition. The Acer Swift is the exact same price up here in Canada for $900. It offers a better screen, a far superior keyboard, and a much better build quality with a metallic finish, might I add. So when you compare all those things, even to other laptops like the Lenovo's IdeaPad series or even Dell's Inspiron 5000 series, this laptop just falls short in nearly every category. The only thing it has going for it is decent performance, which doesn't really exceed any of the competition. It's more or less in line. All in all, I think unless or otherwise you find this laptop on a pretty good deal where it's at least $100 USD off, I would not recommend this laptop, just the fact that it doesn't excel anywhere in particular. Now with that being said, one thing I will say is that this laptop most likely will go on sale. HP does a pretty good job of bringing up sales overall. And I'll also say this, that just because this laptop is bad doesn't mean that HP is a bad brand when it comes to laptop manufacturing. They have some pretty good laptops with their Envy series, and this is just one of those cases where it's not something I personally found to be particularly useful or good. All in all guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you found it insightful, and I hope it helps you make the right decision as far as purchasing goes. If you did, consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. We've always got some awesome stuff coming up. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Souls Tech logging out.